Today on Eye on Northwest Politics, it is decided the party nominations for Oregon governor are locked in. For the Democrats, it's former Oregon House Speaker Tina Kotek, and for the Republicans, former House Minority Leader Christine Drazan. In the next half hour, we sit down with both candidates. What will they do about the homeless crisis and other pressing issues for Oregonians? Eye on Northwest Politics starts now. Thanks for joining us. This is Eye on Northwest Politics. I'm Ken Bawdy. Let's get right to your top political headlines. Ballots are still being counted in Clackamas County. Secretary of State Shemia Fagan called the delay in Clackamas County outrageous. Ballots in the county had blurry barcodes, which made them unscannable. They're being hand counted. Clackamas County Clerk Sherry Hall says the vote will be counted no later than the end of next week. Seven-term U.S. Representative Kurt Schrader has been ousted in the Democratic primary by challenger Jamie McLeod-Skinner. She had the backing of local Democratic parties in all four counties covered by the redrawn 5th Congressional District seat. McLeod-Skinner will face Republican Lori Chavez-DeRemer in November. And the organizers behind the Greater Idaho movement say they have drawn up a less ambitious map to introduce to state legislatures. Here's the new map that they're proposing, which only includes eastern Oregon. The original map included southern Oregon out to the coast, but those counties voted down the Greater Idaho proposal during Oregon's primary election. The movement is asking Oregon state lawmakers for hearings that would invite Idaho to begin talks about moving the border between the two states. Former Oregon House Speaker Tina Kotek won the Democratic nomination for governor by a landslide, 56% of the vote compared to 32% to her closest challenger, State Treasurer Tobias Reed. Now, Tina Kotek's attention turns to the November election, where in an historic race, she will face two other women, Republican Christine Drazan and former Democrat, now unaffiliated candidate Betsy Johnson. Tina Kotek, welcome back to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thank you, Ken. Nice to be here.
If you're elected, you would be the first openly lesbian governor ever elected. Does that mean something to you, and if so, what?
Well, it definitely means something to the LGBTQ community to see someone from the community seek an office at this level. What I know is it's not the reason that I'm running, and it's also really important for LGBT youth out there who are trying to be their authentic selves, and to see someone who's running and saying, look, there's a future for me, I can do these types of things. It's a great responsibility, and it would be an honor if it does happen.
Governor Brown, one of the least popular governors in the nation, especially for her handling of the pandemic. If you're elected, how would you be different?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, 250,000 Oregonians voted for me. They know who I am. They know that I have solved problems as a Speaker of the Oregon House. My job as governor will be to make sure state government can function, serve people, make sure people have what they need, and make sure the whole state is included. And I look forward to having that responsibility, and I'm just very gratified for the voters who have moved me to the November election.
Top of mind in terms of issues for Oregonians, the homeless crisis. Yeah. What would be your solutions, and what can a governor really do about that? Oh,
I think a governor can do a lot. And I have been traveling, and the housing crisis, the homelessness in communities around the state is top of mind, whether it was Medford or Bend or out on the coast. Housing is an issue everywhere. So I have a 5-point plan that on day one particularly focuses on how we can help get people who are living on the streets into more permanency, a shelter to then get into permanent housing. I did that with Project Turnkey, which was a project where we spent money to buy up motels where people can get into motel spaces, where then they can get some stability and then be moved into permanent housing. As governor, I'm going to work on day one with our local leaders to figure out what the state can do more to help them out. And it really is both the first 10 minutes, the next 10 months, the next 10 years. We also have to build more housing in this state. So we have to do it all, and my 5-point plan on my website goes through all the different things we need to do, and I will be starting day one if elected.
How much funding will the state be able to provide to that effort?
Well, I think it's resources, and we have been doing, millions and billions of dollars actually over the last 5 to 6 years, but it's helping local government to partner with the money they have with state money. It's going to take money. It's actually going to take a lot of management, making sure that all local leaders are on the same page, rowing in the same direction. And the state, I think, has, and as governor, have the authority and responsibility to bring people together, to bring urgency, and to make sure there is no barrier to solving the problem.
Last year was a record year for gun violence, especially here in Portland, and we're on track to be even worse this year. What can be done at the state level to deal with gun violence?
Yeah, the violence here locally, we hear it, we see it, we feel it. And then, of course, the national news of shootings in Texas and in New York, the extreme examples of gun violence. We have been working hard in the state, and as Speaker, I've been trying to pass common sense legislation that protects people, increasing background checks, making sure that people who have been convicted of domestic violence don't have access to guns. And we have to do more. My plan on my website talks about banning ghost guns, making sure people can't manufacture in their own homes, making sure that if you are under 21 that you're not being able to go out and buy an assault weapon. And I think it's important that when someone is convicted of a hate crime, that they don't have access to firearms because of the damage they can do to communities. And locally, it's making sure we have the appropriate law enforcement response. When violence is involved, we need to make sure we have police there. And when someone's in a mental health crisis, making sure we have Portland Street response there. There is a lot we can do as a state to work with local government to have the resources they need.
Do you advocate more money to add more police officers in municipalities?
Well, I think one of the things the state can specifically do is make sure we have more classes for training new law enforcement officers. That happens at the state level, and we fund those classes. And I know we're having trouble, hiring here in Portland. The more classes we can have once someone's in the pipeline, the sooner they can get on the street. So that is something concrete the state can do. And we have, and I've been supportive of additional money for things like Portland Street Response. So a mental health professional can help someone in crisis, and that frees up a police officer to go handle someone who might be attacking somebody. So having the right people at the right time is definitely something the state can support.
We'll be hearing from your Republican opponent, Christine Drazen, in a moment, but some Republicans feel that they really have a chance to win the governor's seat for the first time in 37 years, since Vic Atiyeh was our last Republican governor. And some of this is because they feel that Betsy Johnson, who will be entering this race, will pull votes from the Democrats. How do you feel about that argument, and is that something that you're concerned about?
Well, it's certainly a very important governor's race. We haven't had an open race like this in a couple decades. There will be a new governor. And for me, I'm going to work hard to earn every vote. And I think my values are best aligned with most Oregon voters. I think you see that in the number of votes I received in the primary. People are concerned about what's happening. The Supreme Court of the United States is potentially going to take us back 50 years by overturning Roe v. Wade. That is a very important issue for Oregonians, Democrats, non-affiliated, and Republicans. And I'm the one candidate in the race, for example, that has a strong track record on protecting reproductive rights here in our state. And someone like Christine Drazen is proud to have the support of an anti-choice organization in our state. Those types of contrasts are going to be what this race is about.
Now, your margin of victory in the primary shows that traditional Democrats and progressives are behind you. But has the politics of Oregon really moved more towards the middle?
Well, I think the track record of things that I've worked on as Speaker of the House, raising the minimum wage, making sure people have access to paid sick leave and paid family leave, those are real bread and butter issues that I think I'm very much in tune with Oregon voters. I don't think that is extreme in any sense of the word. And I think what Oregonians want is a future where people can be successful wherever they live in the state. And as a governor, that's what I'm going to work on.
In terms of, you've had a lot of successes, a number of successes, and you mentioned, the gun laws as well as some of the other issues. One thing in our Democratic debate that was talked about was the delay in the family leave, the institution of the family leave bill. So what do you say about that? What's the reason why it took so long to get that to the finish line?
Well, we certainly, when that law was passed, we put a timeline in place, and then the pandemic happened. And what will be my focus as governor is that when we start a program, it works. And I think the timeline you're now on for having paid family and medical leave out to Oregonians is on track, and it's going to be done in a way where it will be successful. And as governor, my job is to follow through on those promises, making sure I'm going to be more focused on my agencies than the legislature, because it's about making sure things work and that people get what they need.
What are your other priorities?
Well, we've talked about housing and homelessness, and I think one of the big contrasts in this race in November will be about climate change. Protecting communities who are impacted by the climate that is changing, and also doing what we can to keep it from getting worse. I think that is a top of mind issue for a lot of Oregonians because they're impacted by wildfires and drought and other things. The other issue that I will say, and you probably saw last week, I have the endorsement of Nick Kristof. We were visiting a mental health and addiction facility to talk about making sure Oregonians who need help to deal with a substance abuse issue or a mental health issue have the resources they need. That is a very important topic for me, and will also be something we have to deal with. We have to make sure people can get the care they need.
Tina Kotek, thank you for joining me on Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thank you, Ken. Good to see you.
Next, Tina Kotek's former opponent in the legislature, now her opponent for governor of Oregon, Republican and former House Minority Leader Christine Drazan makes her case on Eye on Northwest Politics.